Today on Locked On Canadiens, it is back. Rumor Roundup up next.
You are Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi there, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Locked On Canadiens. I technically lied to you. Rumor Roundup is in the second segment. First, we got to do a Jake Evans season review. But first, I need to thank you all for being, for having us as your first listen every day. As you know, we're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where you get your team every day, free and available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. My name is Laura Saba, also known as the Active Stick, and I'm joined, as always, by the wonderful Ian Boisvert, also known as Maybe It's Ian, and the Rumor Roundup cowboy hat is ready.
It is. It's been calling to me like the Green Goblin mask from my closet for the last, I guess, few months. Honestly,
Since early March, right?
Yeah, I'm hoping to get some more use out of it as we head into the summer. And we've got some names that are starting to percolate around the National Hockey League. So I have a feeling we'll be seeing a lot more of this hat come the following weeks.
Which is really exciting because it's one of the things that our listeners liked a lot. But first, before we get into the Rumor Roundup, we're going to talk about how important Jake Evans was to the Canadian season. And later on in the show, we're going to talk about Carey Price, his advice for Jacob Fowler, and whether it is time for him to get into the Hall of Fame discussion. But first, let's get into our Jake Evans review. As you know, we are going in alphabetical order with these reviews, just in order of last name. We are skipping the goalies, though, because we want to plan a special episode around that. But today, it's Jake Evans' turn, and we are starting with selecting one word to describe Jake Evans' season. Ian, what is yours?
Earned. He earned everything he had this year. He's earned everything he's had his entire career. 7th round pick, absolute long shot to make the NHL, worked his tail off in the AHL, becoming a very valuable player, recognizing the kind of player he was, right? He knows he's not a top line player. He's a 4th line center, which is very important. And he earned a little bit more security with that 4-year contract extension he got back in March. So earned is my word for Jake Evans for the 24-25 campaign. What about you?
So this is going to be a little bit maybe controversial. I don't know, because my word is actually unsung, which is a little bit crazy considering he was probably at the top of the trade list from about early November all the way until he signed his extension. Not only that, people were scouting him. Everybody expected him to get traded for the most value. But I also think that we didn't contextualize as much as we could have about how his role is 4th line center, right? That is what he does for a living. Yeah. And he has a ceiling, and the ceiling is NHL 4th line center. We saw him play on the 2nd line a couple of times. It wasn't the best idea. It occasionally did improve his line mate.
Experiment. Yeah,
it was an experiment. But I think the thing is, the impact that he had, and that's why I'm calling it unsung. There might be a better word for it, but that's the word that came to mind for me, is the impact that he had on the team as a whole, on their play, on their season, on the outcome of their season, is outsized compared to the fact or the reality that he is a 4th line center.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You mentioned his ceiling is a 4th line center. His floor is also a 4th line center. That just is what he is, right? The range of potential outcomes for Jake Evans is slim. He is what he is. Of the guys on this roster who you kind of can wonder, what are we going to get out of this player on any given night? You know what you're getting from Jake Evans. And I know a lot of people didn't want to pay for a 4th line center, which $2.85 million for the next 4 years. That's not going to be significant enough to cause, financial hardship for the Montreal Canadiens or just issues for their cap structure. But what you get in paying that is you get that peace of mind that every time I roll the 4th line out on the ice, Jake Evans is on it. And I know that we're in good hands if Jake Evans is on it. Marty loves starting that line. He loves starting the 4th line. Don't know what he's going to do if they don't keep Yoel Armia. But he'll probably still be able to just roll Evans, Guy, and Heineman over the boards, and expect them to forecheck and keep the other team pinned in their own zone. 52.9% at faceoffs, 36 points, career high. Ninth in the NHL in shorthanded points with 6. Only 8 guys had more, 8 guys had more than him in shorthanded points. Has your view of the contract extension changed at all? Has it evolved since he signed it between then and now?
No, absolutely not. And what I will say as well on that is that it's going to look cheap in a while. Just because fourth line centers are not something that you would consider to be at a premium in the NHL, depending, second or third line even, or a top line center, number one defenseman, number two defenseman for that matter. They're not considered a premium in the NHL. But there's going to be a point where everybody catches up, especially as we're seeing a lot of this younger generation of GMs doing rebuilds, and a lot of the older generation slowly being phased out, or their talents being redirected differently. Is that you're going to see that people are going to place more value up and down their lineup as opposed to just being top heavy, right? So when that happens, that's when Jake Evans's contract, or as that is happening, it is happening as we speak, that's when Jake Evans's contract is going to seem cheap. Now, what's going to happen next year is he's not going to have a season as good as he was this year, and then everybody's going to say that it's an overpay. And we're going to have to remember this moment when we say that, because this was his career year. It was literally a career year for him.
Yep.
A lot of times that's followed by a slight downturn, sometimes a massive drop. But what you're getting from Jake Evans, I feel like the value you're getting is enough for us to at least eat that, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And, he went on a bit of a heater towards the end of his time where he was still looking for a contract extension. The Canadiens did not pay Jake Evans for his offense. Let's not get that twisted in any way, shape, or form. They paid him to be the fourth line center and to provide, valuable minutes deep into games, valuable minutes on the penalty kill. Arpon Basu talks a lot about the concept of a strong link team and a weak link team. Like, a strong link team is one where you have one guy who does everything, and the rest of your roster is just guys. And then as a weak link team, the idea is our worst player is better than your worst players. Jake Evans leads the Canadiens towards being a weak link team, right? If he's a core part of your fourth line, you're in really good shape, right?
Yes.
He is a luxury to have at that fourth line center position, and he helps the Canadiens get deeper. He helps them become that team that can roll 4 lines every night, which Marty and every NHL coach wants to do, for what it's worth. So I think, we cannot overstate his value and what he showed us this year. He showed us all that he can be that guy. Of course, it helps to have a career year and a contract year, right? Doesn't hurt. It's like Dale Weiss all over again. That just happens from time to time. But again, they're not paying him for his offense. It's nice that he can chip in offensively from, now and then. If he maxes out at 30 points for the rest of that contract, so be it, because that's not why they paid him.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that you also have to think about is, we talked a lot about freeing Nick Suzuki when you put Josh Anderson on the penalty kill, or Christian Dvorak on the penalty kill, whatever that.
Yeah.
We also have to remember that putting Jake Evans out there frees up a lot of brain space behind the bench, right? You've got a guy and hopefully a line there that you don't have to worry about, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to worry about breaking them up unless you need to move someone up for injury purposes, or, to send a message or whatever. You're just like, I'm going to worry about these lines that are not functioning, who to mix and match. It's just one thing that the coaching staff does not have to worry about. It's something that the goaltender doesn't have to worry about. It's something that honestly, it boosts the confidence of the people on the ice, because they know that defensively somebody is taking care of them.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And one final thing on the penalty kill. Montreal could not go into next season without securing some parts of that penalty kill, right? We're pretty certain they're going to lose Christian Dvorak. Yoel Armia is still a question mark. If they had lost Jake Evans at the same time, that of the forwards that you play on the penalty kill, that's 3 out of the 4 of them. You can't go into the year like that. So,
and you also have to remember the penalty kill stats this year were so much improved.
They're good. So much better.
Yeah. So that the reason was who was on it. And so it's really, really important to remember that unless you want to regress that part, you're already working to like improve the rest of your lineup. You're working to improve your team as a whole. Like regressing on that side is not really going to do you any favors. And you're going to end up paying more on other ends, like,
Yep.
to get other players or whatever it is. So then Jake Evans's contract becomes moot.
Yep. Absolutely.
All right. So I know that everybody's been waiting months for this, months, and we are bringing it back. If you're a new listener, we do a thing called Rumor Roundup, and all I'm going to say is yeehaw, and that's coming up next. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling longer. Personally, I love the no shells variety. It is the perfect grab and go snack for my busy, busy days. Whether I'm snacking at my desk, which is usually what's happening, or if I'm on a road trip, or I just need a quick protein boost, they are always my go-to. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are also a classic favorite. Whether you're running between meetings, dropping off the kids, or doing anything at all, if you need a quick protein boost, Wonderful Pistachios are the snack that works as hard as you do. Get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. All right. For those of you who are watching on YouTube, you will see that the hat is back. Ian has a cowboy hat. The hat budget on this show is quite high. We've got many hats for many occasions. And most of the time when we do Rumor Roundup, we have a cowboy hat. Now, there are different sizes of cowboy hat, but we've not had the opportunity to break out any of the other sizes at this moment.
Yeah. No, our hat budget is larger than Jake Evans's contract extension over the course of the 4 years. So very much looking forward to that. And yes, as Laura has mentioned, I have another one that this hat that I'm currently wearing pales in comparison. And that is a break in case of, oh my gosh, this guy is coming to Montreal sort of situations. So
it's when Elliot starts tweeting about Sidney Crosby. Like that.
Yeah.
That's when we break out that hat.
Yeah. For sure. But this isn't that. We're starting to get into the off season a little bit, as there's only 4 teams left, and soon there will only be 2. And then there's only going to be 1 standing with the Stanley Cup. And that's really when the rumors will pick back up headed into the draft. But we have some, Laura, I believe Daily Faceoff has published their trade board.
Mm-hmm. They have. And there are a couple of names that come up in Boston. Actually, there's really one name that I wanted to talk about in Boston, really. And this wasn't just Daily Faceoff. I saw it at a couple of places. Is that the Bruins obviously they were in free fall. They're now in a rebuild, and they're looking to potentially part ways with Morgan Geekie and Pavel Zacha.
Yeah. Let's start with Geekie, because I think that's a really interesting player. He just had a career year in Boston. 77 games, 33 goals, 24 assists, 57 points, 6'3", right shot center, kind of guy that everybody in this league is looking for. I think the question I have with Geekie is a question that I had about Kadri, is a question I had about the glut of centers in Utah. Why would those teams be willing to get rid of those things? Right? If Boston is trying to stay young, he's, how old is he? 26? He's almost 27. That's not like, I don't think that's worth giving up on him. Like, if you're selling that kind of player at this point, aren't you trading like David Pastrnak as well? Like, aren't you just completely selling on this idea that anything on this team can get you guys back to the playoffs in any combination that you add guys to it? That's why I kind of find it difficult. I think maybe the reason that we're looking at this is he's an RFA and he needs to get paid.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on Morgan Geekie?
So I feel like if we're gonna get a Geekie, it should be the other one.
Connor Geekie?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just in terms of who's more suited to Montreal, right? Who would fit more in the plan? That's just my opinion, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And I think, the right shot thing, I know some folks have put in our comments that it doesn't matter what way they shoot. It does. And it doesn't matter that it doesn't matter to you. It matters to Marty.
Yes.
And he religiously puts out the guy that needs to take the draw in that specific side of the ice. They will pick, when you start on the power play, you get to pick which face-off dot you start in. They'll start on the same dot if they can to do that. I think it's icing. Maybe that's the other one is when the other team ices the puck, you can pick which circle you want it to go to. That matters to Marty. And so I think that's going to matter in the way the Canadiens look for an option here. The other option out of Boston, Daily Faceoff had them both placed at 16th on the trade board. They didn't even give them separate slots. This is a 2-for-1 special, not to say that any one team is going to pick up both of them. But Pavel Zacha is also a center. He shoots left, 6'3", 206. He is 28 years old, 14 goals, 33 assists, and 47 points. I do want to mention that Geekie and Zacha played mostly on the same line last year in Boston. That was their most used line. The Bruins' most used line at 5-on-5 was Geekie, Zacha, and Pastrnak, and they had a 53.9% expected goals, which is good, but it's spectacular thinking of how bad the Bruins were this year, right?
Yes. Not only that, but you also have to remember that Pastrnak was on that line.
Yeah, exactly. And who is it? The tail wagging the dog here? Is it Pastrnak helping these guys score? Is it the line just gelled really well? I don't know. I mean, I think Pasternak's going to score regardless of what line he's on. He's kind of proven that over his career. I think the thing about Zacha, though, is that he does shoot left, and his faceoff percentage was quite good this year, 53% out in Boston. He's got 2 years left on his current contract at $4.75 million per. So that's like the Christian Dvorak contract. And it's 2 years, which would be right in the window the Canadiens would be wanting to keep a guy to give them a second line center now and allow a guy like Michael Hayes to come into his own, or allow them to find a younger option out there who fits more with the core of this team. But it helps them get to that next step now. And it gives Ivan Demidov a true NHL centerman to play with.
Absolutely. And for me, like, that was a name that I did not think of when we were talking about our 2C or not 2C. I'm not sure if actually any of our listeners sent it to us, because we got so many of them that I'm like blurring who we had on our list and who the listeners sent us. But he was definitely not on my list.
Can I tell you why he wasn't on my list, Laura?
Why? Because you didn't
When
want
was the
anyone
last
from
time the
Boston?
Bruins and Canadiens completed a trade?
Oh,
It was
that's a good...
February 21st, 2001. It was 2001. It was the Canadiens got Patrick Traverse for Aaron Weinrich. They've made 3 trades involving players. The Bruins did trade a newly drafted player by the name of Ken Dryden to the Montreal Canadiens. So that's pretty funny.
That's probably why they didn't do it that much after that.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same way like the Rangers and the Devils never make trades together, right? It's just something, it is entirely irrational. It is entirely irrational, especially now that you only play, like, we'll play Boston at most 4 times a year, and then maybe in the playoffs if they play each other. It's not like, the mid 2000s where you were playing Boston 8 times and it ruled. It was so great. It was so great all the time.
I
loved it. Yeah.
And then like all the games went to all the playoff series went to 7 games.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah. It ruled.
15 games a year.
So let's do yeehaws for both of these players. How juicy of a rumor is this for you?
I would say it's about 3, just because it's more sensible for them to be available, and I think the Canadiens would probably think about it. I don't know if they're never calling Boston or whatever, but they would definitely think about it. So to me, it's a 3.5. You?
Yeah, I think entertainment wise, probably 2.5, because they're not linked to anybody yet. They're just available. Yeah. And it's really just all dependent on what Boston wants to do. It's still up in the air what they want to do. They sure sold off a lot at the deadline. I don't know if they're done doing that. So we'll have to see what they do there. As far as realism, 0 out of 5 yeehaws. And the reason for that is just Montreal and Boston do not trade with one another. And I know, as I said, I'm pre-arguing with the comments. I know it's irrational, and they know it's irrational, but it won't happen.
Okay, hear me out. They trade Pavel Zacha to Pittsburgh, right? And then Pittsburgh trades him over to Montreal, and then they get something out of it.
Yeah, the old Martin Jones to Boston, and they're like, "Don't trade him to LA," and they're like, "Sorry, I couldn't hear you. We were trading him to LA." Like that. That's exactly it. Yeah,
That's
1000%.
exactly, yeah.
We
Yeah.
need a
Don't
third
trade him to
party
Montreal.
mediator to broker that deal.
And one who's like devious too. One who has no scruples.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, that's it for rumor roundup. But if you notice on the Daily Faceoff trade board, there's two names that we have not talked about that we will talk about because they are attractive options that are worth considering. JJ Peterka and Bowen Byram, and we will talk about them at some point in the near future. I don't know. It depends on what the Laval Rocket do tomorrow night or tonight at the time that you're listening to this. But that was rumor roundup for today. I promise you, they will get juicier and juicier as we go. The closer we get to the trade deadline, not the trade deadline, the draft, where all the GMs get together. We just wanted to, just put the training wheels on and get back into it with these Boston ones. But going forward, definitely look out for more rumor roundup. We know you guys love it, and we will indulge as much as we can. Coming up next, is it time to start the Hall of Fame conversation about Carey Price and his very, very bittersweet advice for Jacob Fowler. Before we get into our Carey Price segment, I really wanted to do a summer shout out. We're going to do summer shout outs because the weather is beautiful and we love our listeners. I wanted to shout out all three Kyle Roberts brothers, particularly Kyle lately because he's been doing a lot of our homework for us, sending us little,
rules.
he sent us a rumor roundup today that we will cover a little bit later. But we just wanted to say hi. Like we appreciate you guys so much, listening to us all the time, giving us content suggestions, commenting. Thank you so much. This is our first summer shout out. We're going to be doing them all throughout the summer with all of our listeners. So please interact with us. I also really quickly forgot to shout out Catherine B, who sent us a lot of Jake Evans thoughts that I just absolutely adored reading in our email. And if you ever want to email us, we're at lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. All right. It is time to talk about our Carey Price feelings. Ian, are you ready to talk about Carey Price feelings? Are you getting a Kleenex so you can cry?
I am ready. It's always hard to do this because it's one thing once the players start to get older and they age a little bit and they don't look like they did when you saw them play. Carey Price still looks like the guy that was in the Stanley Cup final for Montreal. So it's super hard to see him behind a microphone and not expect him to be talking about how he just shut out some team, right? It's really hard. And it's hard for him too. I want to point out he had an interview with Tony Marinaro this week. He said, "I feel like I could still go out there and play. To be honest, I feel like I take pretty good care of myself on a day-to-day level. But on the back of my mind, I know I don't have an NHL caliber knee anymore." It's as hard for him as it is for us, if not harder for him. Like it's one of the wrongs of the time that he spent in the league is that he leaves without a championship. But he will not be held out of the Hall of Fame. I think he's a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Yeah. And so I think it's like, so it doesn't matter that he's still quote unquote under contract on LTIR, right? It's like it goes from the last game they play.
Correct. Yeah, because I mean, I think Chris Pronger went in while he was still under contract. I think Marian Hossa also went in while he was still under contract. Those were some behemoth contracts that were signed, I think, before the lockout said, "Hey, stop doing that."
Yeah.
So yeah, it is
but then
possible.
People still did that.
Right, exactly. And the reason, wouldn't it be so funny, like, because Jágr still, I think he's still kind of playing.
Mm-hmm.
Like him and Carey Price could go in the same draft class. That would be really funny to just see a guy who only played in the 2000s and a guy who played in the 80s getting in the same one because on their first year of eligibility would be very funny.
I think so too. But yes, so I believe that. So this is the second season without him playing a single game, right? Second full season without him playing a single game.
Yes, that tracks.
Yes, because he did try a comeback the year that they came last.
Yeah, the dead last season
that.
he came back and played one game, and that was it.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
So he should be eligible soon. I think like if he's in any way left off of it, I think that Montreal would riot.
Yeah, it would be. I think, and I think it's the arguments against him are rather silly. He's the winningest goaltender in the history of the winningest team in National Hockey League history. That matters for something. He has Olympic gold. He has World Juniors gold. He has a Calder Cup. He won the World Cup. He's won everywhere. He's won everywhere except in the National Hockey League. It is not the NHL Hall of Fame. It is the
It's the
Hockey Hall of Fame. And I think a lot of folks get that misconstrued as if none of that other stuff should matter. And it matters just as much, if not more, than winning a Stanley Cup. Because winning a Stanley Cup, we are going to have to come to terms with the fact that a lot of our favorite players are not going to win one. And a lot of the best players of this generation will not win a Stanley Cup, and they deserve to be in there. And we're seeing that more and more, right? Like Jerome McGinley got in, deserved. Yeah. Guy rules. Henrik Lundqvist is the perfect analog to Carey Price. You know, they have just about the same amount of hardware, no cup. And it's not going to matter. Like just like it didn't matter for Henrik Lundqvist. I think he's a lock to get in.
But doesn't Jerome McGinley have a cup with Calgary?
No, Calgary didn't win the cup while he was there. He should have. They got robbed by
right.
robbed by Tampa. Sorry. No, Calgary's only cup came in 89.
Yeah, I just remembered, and then the Carolina and
no, you remembered the good timeline where they won the cup they were supposed to, and they didn't get jobbed by that puck was in 04. It was in the net. I'm not hearing it.
Sorry about that. I just derailed this entire conversation.
No,
back to Carey Price. I think the other thing that people always talk about with the Hall of Fame is what was this person's influence on the game? And for me, the influence is that how many of the young goaltenders of today, who are like currently the starting goaltenders on their teams and superstars and up and coming, modeled their game after him. Yeah. Right? The thing is, like, he didn't have to invent a new playing style. Like, people often like confuse that. They'll say like, "Oh, he didn't invent a new playing style," but people copied and tried to emulate the way he played hockey.
Do you remember when they came back from the bubble? It was the season that was cut short, and then they restarted in the summer.
Yes.
And they started with that fake play-in round.
Yes.
The Penguins hated that idea because they knew, well, Carey Price can steal, 3 out of, I think it was a best of 3 or best of 5.
Like, something like that.
Yeah, I think it was a best of 5. Carey Price can steal 3 games, and he did. And they were mad about it. Like, you go back and you look at any of those player surveys, their most feared goaltender is always Carey Price. So that stuff matters. Let's get to this line though of advice that he had for Jacob Fowler, also in that Tony Marinaro interview. His advice was, I would just say, enjoy the journey, because man, I wish I could do that again. What does that mean to you? Enjoy the journey.
To me, I think it means do not get caught up in the minutia. For example, what is going on right now in Laval with the alternating goaltenders, which is crazy. I don't know what we're going to see tonight when we're watching this game, but hopefully it'll make sense. I think just don't get caught up in things like that. Don't get caught up in things that don't matter. I feel like Carey Price, admittedly, like he admitted himself, he let the media get to him a lot. He changed the way he was because he was open and honest one time. He was real one time, and then it backfired on him, just like getting caught up in stuff like that, and just like remembering how much you enjoy playing hockey with your bros.
Yeah. I think especially when it comes to playing for this team and playing for that sweater, you can't take for granted that you're a Montreal Canadien every day. And Jacob Fowler's from Florida, but he is acutely aware of what that means, right? Of what it means to be a Montreal Canadien. Carey Price lived that. He learned it. He came into Montreal at a very young age. Maybe he wasn't ready when they got him in there. I think that the media attention kind of created the persona of Carey Price, that he was very cool and calm because he had to learn how to do that. I just remember him telling everybody to chill out in the preseason, and he was and then he backed it up with one of the best seasons of his career.
Yeah,
absolutely. He talk was not cheap for Carey Price. Like he always backed it up. I think Jacob Fowler is a pretty cocky kid. I can imagine he's going to have some stuff to say at some point in his career. Just have the guts to back it up, and they will love you in this city.
What I really think is interesting is the way we're talking about Jacob Fowler, the way he was asked about Jacob Fowler, the way we're talking about Jacob Fowler. It seems as though already people expect him to be the next big goaltender for this team. I'm not saying the next 2 years or whatever. It's just that they expect him to be they expect him to have longevity and to be part of that team that eventually is constantly competing for the Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
I feel like the expectations are already there. So
Yeah,
this
and we
advice
have
is
to be
very well
careful.
placed.
We have to be careful, and we have to be careful to not repeat what we did with Caden Primo, which was just they rushed him into the National Hockey League. I don't get the sense that the Canadians are going to do that with Fowler. I think they're going to be very careful with that player.
Yeah.
But goaltending, we say this about all kinds of development, but it's especially true for goaltending development. It's not linear.
No.
Like look at Caden Primo now. He looks incredible because they're just letting him cook in the American Hockey League. Charlie Lindgren, another Montreal Canadiens goalie, as an example. He was not that progression was not linear. So we got to be patient with this kid. All goalies, seriously, be patient with goalies. They need more time.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think the other thing too with Carey Price is that you talked about it. They brought him up before he was ready. And when they traded Cristobal Huet, I just remember just being so angry with them.
Yeah.
It's like, what are you even doing?
Why are you doing that?
Why are you doing that? But it was because they wanted to expose him as much as possible to these high pressure situations, right? So
Yeah.
I think for Jacob Fowler, what's going to end up happening is that there's going to be a time where he's going to be a little bit impatient because there's already two incredibly reliable goaltenders up in Montreal. They might not be the Jacob Fowlers, he might maybe have more talent than them, but he's going to have to wait a while to take those reins. And when the time is right, I know that this front office will engineer everything so that he's in the right position.
Yeah, 1,000%. All right, you want to do our trivia and head out of here?
Let's do our trivia.
All right. Yesterday's trivia question: with face-off being top of mind on Christian Dvorak Player Review Day, who has the most face-off wins in a season in Habs history? Laura, do you remember the answer to this one?
We talked about it, and then now I completely forgot all over again. No, I don't remember. It's Philippe Danault.
It's Turd. Philip Danault. Remember his nickname was Turd because he was a third line center, but he couldn't do the th sound, so he was a third line center.
Nickname?
Yeah. They used to call him Turd. Yeah, because he was a third line center.
That's so mean.
It kind of, but it's better than Philly or whatever they'd call him. I don't know.
Danny,
Yes,
they call him Danny. They call him Danny.
Phil Danault had 882 faceoff wins in the 2018-19 season. The caveat on this, and I point this out to just say shame on the old National Hockey League for never keeping these stats. Faceoff wins were only recorded as a stat starting in 2007. So we lost forever of history because they just didn't really care to do that, which is very silly. Anyway, let's go to our question for today. I haven't done one of these in a while. It's a player path. And it's Montreal and Boston centered because we talked a lot about some Bruins players who could become Canadians. So the player path is Calgary, Montreal, Dallas, Boston, Nashville, Calgary. I'll do that again. Calgary, Montreal, Dallas, Boston, Nashville, Calgary. If you have the answer, put it in the comments on YouTube. Tell us how smart you are. Send it to us via email, lockedoncanadians@gmail.com. We'll shout you out on the next episode of the show.
All right, you heard the man. Make sure you do keep in touch with us, and you can reach us at lockedoncanadians@gmail.com. You can also find us on social media, DM us there, leave comments. If you have any mailback questions, if you have any opinions, we're lockedoncanadians@gmail. We're Locked On Canadians on Blue Sky, on TikTok, on Instagram. We also really, really love getting emails from you guys, just about everything. Laval is in the conference finals. We're going to be covering them as of tomorrow. Make sure you're subscribed to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. Tell your friends, subscribe. Thank you all so much for listening. We'll be back tomorrow with a Laval Rocket recap.